Things happen. Absolutely.
Can I just say one thing?
It's just transition a PR exercise.
Yesterday, committee.
Well, I mean, even the CEO of Bord na Móna apparently said at a trade union meeting that just transition is 95%, bull the rest. Now, he didn't say that yesterday at the committee, but he showed complete disdain for dealing with the group of unions. And we had the ICTU in first, and him and other CEOs from the ESB later. But he does not want to talk about the terms and conditions and pay and pensions of the workers. And unless you deal with that, then there is no justice in that transition, because those workers, their families and their communities rely on their income. 86 million a year in wages comes into those regions. And now they're putting in a paltry 3 million to deal with the workers' end of the just transition.
Well, do you think it should be deferred?
They are really being thrown on the scrap heap. No, I'm not saying it should be deferred. The closure of the peat as a means of production is the right thing to do, and the re-wetting of the bogs, etc., needs to happen. But the workers and their communities need to be treated in a just way. You compare the paltry 3 million that they're giving to workers in the Midlands, and the same size workforce in northern Spain, same size communities, got 250 million to create a just transition with all the implementation of safeguarding the community's wages and pensions around it. What are we doing? And it is the first litmus test of this government in dealing with a just transition, and they're absolutely...
Right, let's hear Michael on this again, and then Matt.
Public Accounts Committee, it transpired that the only way we're going to meet any targets is by paying 121 million for carbon credits. Is that really sincere?
Carbon credits are a complete waste of time. They really are. And they take place globally. And it's all about exchanging how much filth and dirt we can produce into the atmosphere and buying back the credits off other countries that don't produce it. I think it's a disgraceful mechanism for hiding the truth. It's not about whether it's sincere or not. It's just a fake mechanism, and it doesn't reduce emissions. We've had carbon credits for at least a decade, and emissions go up and up and up every year. So I think you need to look at the evidence as it plays out, just like the increases in carbon tax will not reduce emissions, because, as Michael said, if you live in rural Ireland, you need a car because the public transport is so bad. So the way in which we're tackling climate change is completely wrong. We need to start at the source, and that is the fossil fuels. And yet we're going to import fracked gas from North America. This is the intention, into Shannon and into Cork. Fracked gas produces a huge amount of methane, which is like 80 times more captivating of the heat than carbon is. I don't understand how they can talk this way and then say we're doing this for the for retrofitting and that for the Bord na Móna workers. It's absolutely contradictory.
How can the government support the
else unless they're prepared to provide them with housing and with proper jobs? How else at the moment it can be catered for? And I think that it will be controversial, but I think it behoves us as a society to be humane and decent towards. There's actually, sorry for correcting you there, there's actually 60 million displaced refugees across the planet, the highest since World War II.
Yeah.
7 million from Syria, 60 million in total. And they are from war-torn zones and zones plagued by famine and drought. And
we
flooding.
Don't take too many of them, do we? Despite our promises in the past, we don't.
We certainly don't. And most...
But can Europe take them all?
Well,
do you favour an open door policy?
Well, what I favour is a humane policy, but I have to agree with Matt. You have to trace back the root of the problem. And the root of first of all, climate change is going to increase this even more, because the disasters and the impact of climate change are going to hit the sub-Saharan continent and the Middle East much harder than they are this part of the world, and they're less able to cope with it. But I also have to agree with Matt that the interference by Western powers and the competition to control the spoils and the resources of the world between the most powerful has led to many of these disasters, and they continue in supplying arms to many sides. I mean, the amount of arms sold from Europe into these conflicts is absolutely astonishing, and it is the Western powers that benefit from the sale of those arms. So if you go back to the root of the problem, you might start making a difference.
So, Mary O'Rourke, I mean...
Hypocrisy of Fine Gael. The day after I had a go at the Taoiseach for tolerating Verona Murphy as the candidate, Simon Coveney appears in Wexford with Verona, who wasn't allowed to speak to the media, but Simon then proceeds to gloss over the whole thing by saying that we need to have higher standards in all political parties. We need to vet our candidates. Speak for yourself, Simon. We do not have racists running in elections or even have racists as members of our party, because a party of principle that stands up for people does not allow hatred and division. And Verona Murphy coming out afterwards and expressing apology is a bit hard to swallow. Because as you said,
what vetting procedure do your party use on
we don't have a vetting procedure because we don't have racists. One of our statements is we're committed to anti-racism and equality. Now, people don't join you when you make that commitment.
And if she's nice, she's a racist. Sorry.
I think it's
sorry, lads. No, I want to move on to let others an opportunity to talk.
Fine Gael is an anti-racist party as well.
Yeah. What about vetting?
Difficulty restraining yourself there.
Yeah.
I'm just highly amused at the hypocrisy of Fine Gael. The day after I had a go at the Taoiseach for tolerating Verona Murphy as the candidate, Simon Coveney appears in Wexford with Verona, who wasn't allowed to speak to the media, but Simon then proceeds to gloss over the whole thing by saying that we need to have higher standards in all political parties. We need to vet our candidates. Speak for yourself, Simon. We do not have racists running in elections or even have racists as members of our party, because a party of principle that stands up for people does not allow hatred and division. And Verona Murphy coming out afterwards and expressing apology is a bit hard to swallow. Because as you said,
what vetting procedure do your party use on
we don't have a vetting procedure because we don't have racists. One of our statements is we're committed to anti-racism and equality. Now, people don't join you when you make that commitment.
And if she's nice, she's a racist. Sorry, lads. No, I want to move on to let others an opportunity to talk.